I'm Kathleen Carroll. I'm an attorney, and I used to work for the state of California, the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. That is the agency located in Sacramento, California, that licenses school teachers. It issues credentials, and it also approves teacher preparation programs and is involved with the tests that are that the teachers need to take in order to receive their license. I'm up here today because I'm very, very concerned. There's a number of YouTube videos about what I uncovered while I was working at CTC, and I initiated a state audit which ended up in me getting severely retaliated against and fired from my job. But more recently, I have discovered through public record requests incidences where teachers are literally being placed in public records on the internet with their name, stating that they are essentially have a mental disorder. And I'm just really upset about this. I want all teachers out there to know that this is occurring, because it's either someone has forged signatures, and if that's the case, there needs to be a criminal investigation. And if the signatures were not forged, there needs to be a lot of questions asked. The CTA, the California Teachers Association, hires private law firms to represent teachers within the state, whether it be a dismissal hearing or whether it be before the CTC for a licensing action. And there's a number of firms that are contracted, literally contracted with CTA. One of the lawyers is Ernest Tuttle. And the reason I bring up his name is he has signed, or someone has forged his signature, either way, a document, a settlement agreement, essentially. Basically, this has now become a public record, and it literally says that this person has to be, his credential has to be suspended until he, because he has a mental disorder. It's searchable if any, I mean, this person, this is supposed to be private information. If a person has a mental health disability, there's so many laws that this invokes, but the main one obviously is American with Disabilities Act. There's privacy issues. The person's name should not be searchable on the internet with the term mental disorder, and that's disgusting. These people who have done this, there should be a criminal investigation. They basically have blacklisted these people from ever working. I mean, you wouldn't want your name on the internet with mental disorder. It's disgusting. What should happen to ensure privacy is some kind of non-disciplinary disability suspension, if that. I mean, if someone has a physical disability or a mental health disability, the law requires the person be offered reasonable accommodation. If they need to take a leave or whatever, they shouldn't be dismissed from a district. There should be an offer of a reasonable accommodation, one. And they certainly, the law, even in the education code, says that you're not supposed to be sanctioning someone for any kind of disability. It should be non-disciplinary, and they should be put on maybe a disability suspension. But the problem, and this goes back to some of the things that I've seen at the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, is they were just literally abusing their power and acting outside the scope of their authority, violating laws. But in terms of posting people's name on the internet with mental disorders, I want to say very clearly that this is so horrific. I mean, I have seen more than one name now, and I have heard from more than one teacher now that this is happening. So people's names are being put on the internet, and people are being punished and being deemed to be mentally ill. And I can't help but wonder, given how many stories I've received now, that there's all this advertising, stop the stigma. which, sounds great. Yeah, stop the stigma. There shouldn't be a stigma. If someone has depression or whether they have bipolar, there shouldn't be a stigma. People should be feel free to talk to someone if they do need that assistance. But they certainly shouldn't be publicized as having a medical condition or a mental health condition so they can be biased against by future employers.
Well, Governor Brown and Kamala Harris have been informed of serious financial conflicts of interest, serious problems, systemic problems of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. What is their position on these flagrant violations of the law at the Commission on Teacher Credentials?
I don't know what their position is. I don't recall that Governor Brown has made a statement in terms of when the audit came out. The audit did not talk about all the legal violations. One of the legal violations that was mentioned in the state audit of CTC that I initiated was the unlawful delegation of authority to staff instead of the decision makers, which was in violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. They were tampering with outcomes. They literally had family members on the staff. One of the committee's members' wife was on the payroll. It was really bad. It was really bad. Senator Steinberg was informed about this. I told Susan McKee, his district director. I was just dismissed. I was just treated very dismissively. And I know Kamala Harris was sent a letter about a number of very disturbing conflicts of interest within the education community. As far as I know, she never responded to that. I don't know what her position is about any of this because when the audit happened, it was 2010. Governor Brown wasn't even elected yet. He was elected that November, and the audit report wasn't released until April of the next year. So I do know that the general counsel, whose name actually appears on one of these consent determinations, these settlement agreements I'm telling you about, she retired early is the official word. I know there was a letter sent by Ricardo Lara, who is the head of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, asking for her resignation. But here again, we got very, very serious legal violations. I don't know how many people have read the book, No One Would Listen, but Harry Markopoulos, who was the Bernie Madoff whistleblower, he kept telling everyone how serious it was, and he was just dismissed by SEC. Oh, they don't have the resources to investigate, or we're just going to clean it up, we're going to be better now, whatever. He kept telling people over and over and over again how serious it was. No one was listening to him until the whole house of cards fell down, and $65 billion. I have said to numerous people at numerous levels that there are legal violations happening. I told the state auditor over and over and over again, there were tampering with outcomes, there was conflicts of interest. There's statutory violations. It is very serious.
Well, this commission is under Governor Brown. Isn't he responsible for this commission? Isn't it part of the executive branch?
Yeah, it's part of the executive
branch.
So
he personally is responsible for this, isn't he? He's in charge of this commission.
He's not physically over there, but he's the governor of the state, so yes.
And this is the commission is under his...
He's appointed some of the commissioners. Some of them are statutorily created. So he doesn't appoint the entire commission, but the majority of them, yes.
Now, you have filed a lawsuit.
Yes.
Around these issues. What does the lawsuit say?
It talks about a number of things that I just feel like a broken record almost at this point. Numerous statutory violations, discriminating against people with perceived mental health disabilities.
How do they do that?
Oh, I just explained how they were posting people's name, but they have a reg, which is 80309, but it was very arbitrary. Basically, they'd have... one of the attorneys literally would say, oh, just revoke them and let them come back with a psyche valve. There was just complete inhumanity about personal information, privacy issues. It is really inhumane how they treated teachers, and there was just this real biased, and I really didn't understand it. I mean, I still haven't necessarily put all the pieces together, except for the commissioners. I've seen that they really abuse the so-called public representative. A number of them, Margaret Fortune, Paula Cordero, who's at University of San Diego, Ting Sun, who eventually became the chair. There was a number of economic conflicts they had with the public education industry that they failed to disclose. And I'll just name a bunch of circles. So Margaret Fortune, she was once the chair. She was involved with Project Pipeline and Fortune School of Education. She has basically a for-profit teacher preparation program. Paula Cordero was still is, I believe, the dean of the School of Education for University of San Diego, which is a Jesuit school. She also sits on the board, or used to sit on the board, of the James Irvine Foundation. Well, the James Irvine Foundation funds WestEd. And Beverly Young sits on WestEd. Now, Paula Cordero never disclosed some of these, associations.
And what is WestEd?
WestEd is essentially it's created under a joint powers agreement. I believe it's a federal public agency that has a lot of private partnerships. Pearson and Bill and Melinda Gates and Lumina Foundation. There's a whole list of business and nonprofits and foundations that fund it, along with our tax dollars are funding it. So there's a number of school districts. I got a few annual reports. Oakland Unified funded it. San Francisco Unified. Just UC California. University of California. There's just a number of entities. It's too many to list right here. Fund this organization that seems to be operating under the radar, and no one's really.
Well, doesn't it put projects together, research projects on testing and on different school reform issues?
Well, they produce a lot of reports. The accuracy of the reports, I now question. One thing I should continue with this whole circle of commissioners. We had a vice chair, Margaret Gaston, who had a nonprofit called Center for Future Teaching and Learning. And I really didn't know much about the nonprofit, to be honest with you. But I am going to say this because it happened. One day during the state audit, as the auditors were calling me at the office sometimes, but I was always trying to go on my lunch break to talk to them or meet with them in the evenings, because during the day, obviously, I had to do my job. And one day, one of the auditors called me and literally said to me, "I know I'm being lied to." And I was like, "Oh, okay." There was a lot of things going on. There appeared to be alteration of documents. At one point, I was being told the whole copy machine was taken out of the copy room because they were scanning documents, possibly even signatures. And I got to the state auditor's office after being told that they thought they were being lied to. And I started getting this barrage of questions about whether or not there really was a teacher shortage. And to be honest, I really didn't know. The only thing I knew was that Margaret Gaston and her nonprofit suggested that there was a teacher shortage from reports. So it appeared that possibly these entities, WestEd, oh, by the way, WestEd has acquired Margaret Gaston's nonprofit, Center for Future Teaching and Learning now, and she, I believe, is some political consultant in Washington, D.C. now. And I don't know how much money changed hands or what, but it appears that the CTC was relying on reports of these various nonprofits that the commissioners either were directors of or sat on the board of. And the conflicts were pretty horrific. And I did see a lot of harm to a lot of people.
Well, why would they say that there was a teacher shortage?
again, just to be fair, I really don't know if they're, I mean, to me, when I was
But
asked.
why would they have, if that's a political position, that there's a teacher shortage in California?
Well,
why would
certainly,
they be,
I could see if they want to push this for-profit teacher prep programs, and it's a moneymaker to basically move out fully credentialed teachers and replace them with either TFA or
Teach for America,
or people that have gone through some quickie teacher prep program. I can see that being at the time I was asked the question. There were all these rifts going on. There, the reduction in force hearings going on. I remember some of the CTA attorneys coming up to the commission, and it just seemed massive. I mean, I remember being told some of the numbers. I mean, it was really, all these teachers were getting laid off. At the time, I'm reporting this backlog, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. And even the auditor, I said, wait a minute, there's all these layoff hearings going on, there's all these backlogs, so where are they getting the numbers for these so-called teacher shortage? And, is there really a teacher shortage? So what they did with that information, I don't know, because it wasn't in the audit report, and a lot of things didn't come in the audit report. But that was an issue that got raised. So,
your lawsuit says that there are financial conflicts of interest, that the CTC is not operating in the public interest.
No, and that's really what, to me, kind of pushed it over the edge. There's, you just hear everyone, kind of against government. And the reason that people get so distrustful of government is these very things. When you've got bad apples really in a government position that shouldn't be there, because they really should be serving the public at large. It's a public trust issue. I mean, quite frankly, there are people that were at the commission, they shouldn't have been there. This should be serving a public interest. And it's very upsetting to me, because I saw it's just morally bankrupt to do this kind of things that has happened. I mean, to put someone's name on the internet and say the person has a mental disorder, to me, that person belongs in prison. Whoever was behind doing that to people, and there's been a number of instances, they belong in prison. There should be a criminal investigation. Those people will never...
So are you calling on Kamala Harris?
Once you have something out there on the internet, you can never take that away. I mean, those people have been harmed. I don't know those people personally, but to me, that it's disgusting.
Well, it seems like...
It's morally bankrupt.
That these officials, Kamala Harris, Attorney General of California, Governor Brown, not willing to pursue an investigation or prosecution because they themselves have conflicts of interest. Is this a systemic problem?
I don't know what, if any, conflicts of interest Kamala Harris has with the public education industry. If she has any, I'm not aware of them.
Governor Brown's wife, Ann Guest, is a former counsel for the Gap Corporation, which runs KIP Foundation. Yes. He instituted private military charter schools in Oakland. He wants to change the categorical funding in California for money to be used for special ed. What is driving the politics of these politicians?
It appears to be money. I am going to say something I'm actually really embarrassed to say, and I voted for Jerry Brown. And I remember, helping get the word out to vote for him, because I thought the alternative, which at the time was Meg Whitman, was just no alternative at all, because she was threatening to slash, public employees and everything like that. And, of all, positive and negatives, I kind of thought, Jerry Brown was someone that I could get behind. I sit here today and I'm actually embarrassed to say that I'm a registered Democrat. Are there Democrats that are good people and want to do the right thing? I hope so. I think there are. Are there Republicans that are good people and want to do the right thing? I know there are. I'm sure there are. But in my own situation, what he's aware of and what he isn't, I don't know. But if he hopefully watches this, I'm a heart transplant recipient. And Mary Armstrong and Ani Kindle have the audacity, it's literally in writing. So they had time to review it and change it and edit it. The CTC hired a private investigator to go after me. So they misappropriated public funds even more. And they literally had the audacity to suggest to this private investigator that I made up my heart transplant. And to me, anyone, Jerry Brown, for him to protect these people, it's embarrassing what happened at CTC. I don't know what's going to happen with my case, but to sweep it under the rug, and they're doing a lot of changes, which may be good, maybe not, but it doesn't help to keep darkness dark. It helps to bring the light in and transparency, because the public deserves that. The public has a right to know when laws are being broken by people. It's the only way to get to the root of the problem. One of the people at the agency that was involved in this was Mary Armstrong. She was the general counsel. And from what I understand, Jerry Brown turned around and hired her daughter to work on his staff, and that's Victoria Hostage. She may be a wonderful person. I hope she is. But it doesn't look very good. And then now, and she was right out of law school, and now she's working as special counsel to the director of industrial relations. But it just is like, are they powerful people and they give each other favors? Here I am saying there's all these conflicts. And what does he do? He turns around and he could have hired anyone. And then CTC, what do? They don't turn around and hire clean people with clean hands. They turned around and hired people that had already been there, that were part of the statutory violations, that had left to other state agencies and come back. And one of the individuals, from my understanding, I think his name is Michael Barth. I don't know him. I've never worked with him. He may be a wonderful person. But he worked at the Office of Administrative Hearings in the special education. Now, the likelihood that teachers might have been involved in some of those hearings is probable, and that there's a potential conflict there. When I'm saying that there's conflicts, it just seems like, why couldn't they hire a more neutral candidate? And the same goes true with the other people that they replaced with. They're all people that were there before when these statutory violations and these legal violations were happening. They should have gone out and hired people that had no conflicts, no, to me it's almost like they want this to continue in the dark until something really bad happens. Well, guess what? Something really bad happened. Names are on the internet now with mental disorder, and I warned them that laws were being violated, including, mental health discrimination issues. I warned them. And so, I don't know how many lawsuits are out there, but it's a shame that taxpayers have to waste money when they could have listened to me the first time.
Are you surprised that there's been virtually no publicity in the major newspapers in California, major radio or television, about this lawsuit that basically charges serious systemic financial and criminal conflict of interest?
I'm not surprised as a lawyer, because, the media, usually doesn't want to get involved in employment matters. And they certainly This is a whole commission that has systemic problems as far as public education in California. There've been no articles. What I'm more surprised at is I have disclosed all of these issues, these legal violations, the conflicts. The media easily could have, could verify whether or not there was a fail to disclose these economic conflicts and whether or not it's true. It is true. I have the documents. It's not surprising to me because of the personnel issue, but it's also not surprising to me because a lot of the media is just bought out, and this is big business.
The Sacramento Bee.
Public education is big business. Yeah, they're in business.
The Sacramento Bee has interest.
They have a business relationship with St. Hope.
And who is St. Hope?
St. Hope Academy is Kevin Johnson, Michelle Rhee's husband's organization.
And they have a financial investment in that.
They're a business partner, yes.
So they wouldn't really be interested in exposing Kevin Johnson and his financial relationship?
Probably not. I mean, they certainly wouldn't be considered a neutral news source.
Now, there's a debate in the state of California about some of these education proposals being made by Governor Brown to eliminate categorical funding, to put $1 billion of new money into testing. What do these proposals mean for the education system in California?
Well, I mean, again, it's just, it's really, really very sad. I mean, $1 billion going to specifically Common Core standards, which seem to be secretly, I ask people, and people still say they're being implemented. No one really has a real clear definition as to actually what they are, but I know that a number of people, this was in the plan and the work for a long time, because I went to the Fair Political Practices Commission. I see that they've gone to meetings that, a few years ago, so this was all kind of like a plan that was going to go ahead, whether the public liked it or not. And that's another issue. When they continue to strip away the rights of the public to comment about something, because it's very clear that there's big money at stake. And Common Core, again, it's just going to be more and more. It was designed through Achieve Inc., a contract with Achieve Inc., which I think has now been taken over by Inbloom. All these names are kind of in my head, but I'm getting calls from all over the country actually now. And Amplify Education. I mean, they're literally data mining. It's very scary because there's no discussion happening about the technology downsides. There's a lot of discussion about technology and some of the things that it can help capture and do. It might be okay, technology, to capture things in a business paradigm, where you're trying to capture sales and you're trying to capture went down months and up months and that type of thing. So, and I like technology, but when we're talking about privacy issues, there needs to be a discussion about where this information is going. Private student record information is just going out into the cyber world. Private medical information going out into the cyber world. People's, whether or not they have, mental health issues, that's going out in cyber world. And what does that mean for those people? It potentially could affect their insurance rates. It could affect their ability to get future employment. I mean, you could just imagine it could be biased and a whole host of issues, whether they want to run for public office. I mean, it just really, there is a downside to technology. And we really, as a society, need to have a more discussion about that, because there's also the technology in education anyway, where it's literally displacing teachers, human beings, people who...
So this $1 billion that Brown is proposing is not for more teachers, to lower the classroom size. Well, this is for more testing for companies like Pearson and others.
Implementing the Common Core standards.
The Gates Foundation, were they involved in getting scores and information from public schools?
Teachers.
From student teachers?
And I believe from students. I got that information, I believe, from Diane Ravitch. I asked her that question because in my own situation, there is a potential issue with FERPA. It is almost ironically. FERPA is the federal law. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but basically it protects the privacy of educational records. It might be the Family Educational Records Privacy Act. I don't know if that's exactly what it stands for, but it basically says whether it's K-12, pre-K, or higher education, student records are confidential, private information, and you could obviously see why that would be. And in 2011, oddly enough, the U.S. Department of Education changed the FERPA regs so third parties could receive private student record information for non-academic purposes. I mean, it appears that, and I was told from Ravitch that some of the unions in New York teacher unions actually had teachers being videotaped, and they were given to Gates. Literally, the tapes were given, and that's an educational record issue. Because not only is it, so let's say they're a student teacher or even a teacher and they're in the classroom, you got the record of the student teacher who's in a university setting studying to be a teacher preparation program. Let's just, for argument's sake, say it's CSU Hayward, for example. They're in that university. Now they're in their classroom doing their field experience. So you got the educational record of the teacher, and then you got the educational record of all the students in the classroom that the video may capture. And so that could just go out into the cyber world in Inbloom and Amplify Education, and anyone can get the students' profile. They can get information. There's just a lot of very scary data mining going on, which may be big business for the technology companies, and that's what they like. Bottom line is profit for them. But for people who care about privacy rights, it's very scary and it's very serious. And there's almost like, it's like a free-for-all. There's no discussion happening, certainly not by our legislators. And there's no discussioning happening on a wide scale.
Now, also there's a bill in the California legislature to create a two-tier system at the community colleges. And Democrats are pushing these bills. What's going on with that?
Well, first I'm going to say, having talked to people literally at this point all over the country, I'm finding myself almost not defending Democrats or Republicans, but I really want to shy away from left bashing or right bashing, because I have to say that I have talked to some really good people that really care about things that are Republican as well as Democrat.
But in California, you have a Democratic legislature controlled by the Democrat, 2/3. You have a Democratic governor. Basically, they can pass whatever they want.
Yeah, they don't need the Republicans.
Yeah, they don't need the Republicans. So we're talking about
unless you're talking about a constitutional amendment like Prop 30.
And what did Prop 30 do?
Prop 30 gave more money to law enforcement for so-called safety. It ended up being a constitutional amendment. It was hijacked by big money, and it created a constitutional amendment to give more money to law enforcement under the guise of safety. Defense contracts and public safety and homeland security, it's a lot of money. It's money, and it was just kind of a scam that it was really for education, because he's already came out with this May revise, and he's saying he wants $1 billion to go to Common Core standards, not $1 billion to go to teachers who've been laid off, to go to schools that have been closed. And every time a school closed, you know what's going to happen. They're going to become a charter. And it's crazy to have these two parallels, a parallel of traditional public schools with elected, where we actually elect the school board members, so people have a right to say who's going to be on that school board, and you got this other parallel, charter schools, which should never exist, because we don't elect who's there. They can hire their friends and their family, and they do, and they give themselves whatever salary they want, and they have no transparency. They're taking public money. They have no elected oversight, elected by us, the people, elected board. It should really just be no charter school. There is corruption. I mean, you don't see it all the time, but every now and then you see cheating scandals, you see embezzlement, you see, a ring in San Francisco Unified just, was embezzling money. Ben Chavez in Oakland with a Native American charter school of some sort. There was embezzling money. I mean, we do see the corruption. It's rife for corruption. It's not to say that corruption doesn't happen in the traditional public schools, but list the traditional public school districts, their political subdivisions. We have a right to those documents. We have a right to oversight. We have a right to transparency. And the more and more and more that we allow our legislators to take money and create this fascist regime where we're not allowed to see anything because it's nonprofit or it doesn't have to comply with public record requests or whatever, we just lose all our rights.
Well, in the case of this bill that would create a two-tier in the community college system, the legislators who are pushing that are saying there's not enough money for classes, so we have to charge different prices for students to go to community college.
Of course there's not enough money. It's all going to these technology companies. It's going to Pearson, it's going to Amplify Education, News Corp, K-12 Inc. I mean, yeah, it's just pouring out the door. Yeah, the pie is a pie. We have so much money. I mean, unless Jerry Brown has some magic wand and he can start printing money, it's a pie. And so if you start taking pieces of the pie and everyone gets greedy, and these technology venture capitalists like New School Venture Fund, Ted Mitchell and John Doerr, they keep eating and eating and eating and sucking their little snort out of the tax dollar trough, there's not much left. And so what's in the public sphere, it's basically creating a system of feeding money to the profiteers, and very little is left over.
Well, these billionaires in California, owners of these big companies, Netflix, all these new media, new technology companies, they seem to have an idea about what education should be.
Yeah. I mean, we are essentially become slaves to the corporate elite because they pay the elections. So essentially, they are being allowed to dictate education policy. It's crazy, but that's what's happening. It's really crazy. There's really the greed and the love of money is just pure evil. I mean, there's no real people that I worked with at CTC. There were some really good people, but there are people I could tell you they should never be in public service. If all they care about is their own selfish greed for power or money or whatever it is, then they should just go form their own little corporation and do whatever they want. But when you come into the public service, you're supposed to be serving the public. You're supposed to do what's best for the public at large, not your own pocketbook, not your own agenda, whatever it is, what's best for the public at large. And there's just too many examples of people in public service serving themselves instead of the public at large.
And you were an attorney at the Commission on Teacher Credentials. You were a whistleblower. You were trying to follow the law, follow the rules. You're now without a job. How long has it been?
Almost 3 years. Almost 3 years.
You're without a job. And
they don't care.
And the people that violated the laws, according to your lawsuit and according to your documentation, they're still doing fine there. They're making money. A lot of these people
have left, but some people are still there. In fact, one woman is still there who had the audacity to say that half the employees didn't believe I had a heart transplant. And it's literally under penalty of perjury. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting.
So what does that say to whistleblowers? I mean, there's other whistleblowers at the pension system, CalSTRS, and the school teachers, STRS pension system, who have been saying that there's corruption, there's spiking of pensions, and these people also get
fired,
bullied, fired, harassed. What does that say to the people of California about what kind of government they have?
It says to the people of California they want to do business as usual. They hate whistleblowers. They don't want the real truth and the light to come in. They don't want transparency. They talk a big talk about how they want transparency, but when push comes to shove, we all get fired. When we bring forth very serious, I mean, I would not have risked my job. I've been through a lot in my life, and I would not have, it really got to a really bad point there, to the point where I literally picked up the phone and was calling a law professor, because there were days I'd get out of bed and I would be crying and say, my God, they were changing things right and left to kind of just create chaos. One day they'd be looking at petty theft, the next day they decided they weren't going to look at petty theft. One day they were looking at test score violations, the next day test score violations were being processed by one person over in a corner. I mean, they were literally being incredibly arbitrary, capricious, violating the law, violating rights, and the fact that it went on so long, it makes it look really bad. It's embarrassing, but unless you open it up and you deal with how bad it really got, you can never get to the root of the problem. Now they're changing policies and procedures. There was a recommendation by the state auditor that they request an attorney general opinion on the issue of unlawful delegation of authority. They just withdrew that attorney, they requested the attorney general opinion. They had an oversight hearing saying they're expecting that attorney general opinion. Then they just got to withdraw it. And so it just got, they're just sweeping things under the rug instead of dealing with very, very serious issues. And it's not just this agency. It's a number of agencies. It's across the country, and we're hearing about IRS and what was going on there. That's disgusting. Targeting one group because of their beliefs. Everyone in this country should have the right to believe what they believe, and they should have a right to speak out about it. And it's become, I hope more people, kind of push the issue, because I think what's happening is it's just become a very authoritarian regime that we're having, and it's a potential. Who said what to whom, and they all literally just kind of attacked me. I mean, I have all the transcripts, and Attorney General, if they really were representing the people of the state of California, they would not be representing, their job is to represent CTC. That's the agency, okay? That's their job, and that's what they're supposed to do, and represent the people of the state of California. But the individuals should be forced to get their own attorneys, because those people misappropriated public funds, they were seriously violating the law, and the Attorney General should have they should have an arm's length with them, because they have a conflict with the people of the state of California, which that should be their prime interest, and the agent, which is CTC. And I'm claiming the same thing. These people were creating serious liability for the agency.
So why is
who is also my client?
Yeah, so why is the Attorney General representing these people who are no longer in state service?
I don't know, but they are. I don't know the question.
They're no longer state employees.
You would have to ask them. I don't know. They are no longer state employees. That's correct. They worked at the agency at the time I was dismissed. And, potentially they're going to argue they were acting within their scope, but they were clearly acting outside of their scope.
So are you saying that the Attorney General, Kamala Harris, is using public money
using public money
to represent criminals
well, they're not criminals yet.
They're representing people who violated the law in California.
Yes.
And violated the trust of the people of California. She's representing these people.
The Attorney General and public taxpayer money is being used to represent people that I blew the whistle on and claimed were violating the law.
And what is the role of the unions in regard to this? The California Teachers Association, the California Federation of Teachers, are they calling on Kamala Harris to investigate and prosecute these people who violated teacher rights in California?
Not to my knowledge. In fact, until recently, I didn't know. I knew a few names that were admonished by having mental health issues, and it's perceived mental health issues, I should say. Because there could be legitimately teachers that had mental health issues and they shouldn't be in the classroom. Okay, let's say, and it's sad. But their name shouldn't be thrown on the internet. They shouldn't be put on the internet. Their license shouldn't be revoked. They should be offered what the law requires, which is a reasonable accommodation and a disability leave. But that's not what was happening. And it's and people are being blacklisted. I have talked to so many people that are in absolute poverty that wake up every day just like myself. I mean, I'm in the same situation where I'm worried, about where my next job's going to be. And I was trying to do what I felt was the right thing. I knew the law was being seriously violated, and all the other attorneys essentially knew each other. At a previous agency, so I really kind of was on my own. There were other staff members that I talked to a little bit about some of the issues, but they didn't understand, I don't think, all of the legal violations that were happening. I tried to tell some of them, but I think they thought, well, Mary was the queen and she could do no wrong, but she was seriously They were seriously violating the law.
Now, I mean, the scapegoating of public teachers, what you're saying is that many teachers that are calling you have been bullied, have been harassed. Wouldn't this cause mental illness if you're being harassed and bullied?
I mean, one man called me and he was harassed to the point where he ended up having a stroke. I know of at least one teacher who ended up committing suicide. I have been called by teachers who felt suicidal, and so they created it. I mean, these privateers, these profiteers, there's just really bad things happening where they're being harassed and mentally tortured. Los Angeles Unified teachers are calling me and telling me this. I mean, I heard it one time, and then I heard it a second time, and then all of a sudden, by the 10th time, I'm like, there's got to be something, this story must be real. I would hear that they're kind of, if they don't like someone, they're hauled off into a district office for 8 hours a day. They can't communicate. If they stand up, they're bullied. Why are you standing up? I need to go to the restroom. They're literally, it's just like mental torture. It's crazy. They call them teacher jails or rubber rooms. And I talked to someone across on the East Coast, and they said the same thing was happening in New York City. And I'm like, what is going on here? What is happening to our moral values? I mean, this is clearly wrong. You don't treat people like animals. You don't even treat animals like that. I mean, what is going on here? Why is this being allowed to happen? You know, this is like inhumane treatment, but it is happening. It's happening, and it's very sad. And people, it's almost like they're creating this people to break, and so they can say, see, that person's crazy. That person should never have been a teacher. And now I'm seeing all this, you know, stop the stigma and mental health advertisements everywhere. So that must be the new latest big business opportunity. But it's almost like they're creating the clientele for it by just driving these people to the brink. You know, if they can't get a job because their name is associated with having a mental disorder, it's almost like back in the Nazi area where they just put people in a pit and let them starve to death. I mean, you know, as far as I know, we're not gassing people yet or shooting them. Maybe that's happening too, who knows? But it is very inhumane. I mean, people are not being treated with dignity, with basic respect. It's well,
they're terrorizing. It sounds like they're terrorizing.
It sounds like they're really terrorizing people, and it's very sad. It's not right.
And what should the unions do about it?
The unions are supposed to be representing their members, and they should be fighting tooth and nail. The lawyer one of these lawyers that they contracted with, Ernest Tuttle, hopefully he sees this video, because if he didn't sign a consent determination, a settlement agreement, where his client's name is associated with mental disorder, then he should have a criminal investigation. That means his signature was forged. And if his signature wasn't forged, he shouldn't be practicing law, because this person, and I won't mention the person's name because the person's probably already been harmed. The person's been blacklisted. It's like the McCarthy era. They're never going to work. And when you can't get a job, you're worried, you're stressed, anxiety builds in, you're going to be depressed one day and anxious the next. And, you know, at some point you're going to sound a little crazy because you sound so desperate because you don't know what's going to happen to your world. And that's the perfect storm for claiming the person is crazy or having a mental disorder. And that's just disgusting. To me, it's so inhumane. It's morally bankrupt. It has to stop. It has to stop. Please, it has to stop. We have to expose this happening. I'm actually still like shaken up when I saw some of the consent determinations that came in from a public record request. I'm still shaken up that happened. And very disgusted by it. Very, very disgusted.
And Kamala Harris now knows about this.
I don't know.
Are you going to file complaints?
I mean, I have Kamala Harris is the Attorney General of the state of California.
Well, if there are crimes
it's kind of like, you know.
If there are crimes being committed, shouldn't she be responsible for taking action?
Yes, yes.
But that's Kamala Harris's job, isn't it?
There's a criminal division at the AG's office as well as the civil division.
And what about the U.S. Attorney? where there's financial manipulation of these governmental agencies like West Ed, who have financial conflicts of interest. They're voting on money.
Now, I think the U.S. Attorney is actually a better avenue to go through to seek criminal sanctions by some of the things that I have seen, because I don't think, first of all, the Attorney General's office in my own case is almost like doing damage control, and instead of really doing what's in the best interest of the public. And so to me, in order to see real severe criminal sanctions, and I do believe there should be criminal sanctions with some of these individuals and the harm that they have caused to people, it's really serious. It's not just civil anymore. There was serious manipulation going on, and I suspect there was some forgery going on.
Well, a lot of this is being driven by profiteers, privatizers, with the federal government.
It's driven by money, but every day, every one of us wakes up and we have a moral compass. You either take the pile of money and break the law, or you do the right thing and you comply with the law.
Yeah, but President Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder are responsible, and Arne Duncan are responsible for carrying out and following the law. Yet they're taking money from these same people. Netflix, these billionaires, are giving them money, giving the administration money, and they seem to be ignoring violations, flagrant violations of the law, not just in California, but nationally.
Yeah, there's serious rights being violated, and there's a lot of things that aren't being followed. And I mean, we're hearing about it now. When we hear about the IRS situation, that was horrible. It's disgusting that they, targeted a particular group of people. That's wrong. There's no justification for that. And our country needs to decide, the society needs to decide, what kind of country do we want to be? What do we want to stand for? What do we want our legacy to be? It's certainly not what's happening. It's embarrassing. I don't want to be saying what happened, all these legal violations, but it happened. And it didn't just happen on paper. It affected real human beings. Real human beings were hurt because of legal violations. And we can't stand for that. When there's legal violations, we need to make sure there's real prosecutions. That's the problem with our country. We've allowed all these settlements to take place and things in Wall Street to take place, and it gets swept under the rug because someone writes a check. We can't allow that anymore. Michael Milken, I just read, the book not too long ago, Den of Thieves. Wow, it was a shocker. I really recommend anyone to read this book.
But the stock of this company, Pearson, these companies are basically playing the stock market on the money that they're going to be getting. For example, Governor Brown's proposal for $1 billion for testing. that's going to benefit the testing companies.
Let's separate. Okay, so Michael Milken was involved in very serious insider trading, and James Stewart he went through grand jury testimony, and he outlines that in the book Den of Thieves. That's not what he was convicted of, though. And it was literally just a plea deal. His case never went to trial. He was never really prosecuted in the real sense of the word. And 22 months, he goes to Pleasanton, he's out 22 months. Ivan Boesky goes to, what's the country club prison down in Southern Cal? Lompoc?
Lompoc.
We need to demand as a society that when people, financial crimes are very serious because they cost human beings sometimes their lives. State Street Corporation was doing this dirty little kind of market timing and fraudulently claiming when their foreign currency trade was taking place, and they were pocketing the difference. And New York Times and the Wall Street Journal did an article about this, but they were tapping in and basically taking public monies from CalPERS and CalSTRS. They're basically profiting by trading on foreign currency. State Street Corporation, which is a holding company, and I don't know what's all under them. But it's those kind of things that happen. And when Harry Markopolos wrote his book, No One Would Listen, it's so true. I mean, it's so horrific. No one wants to believe something that horrific could happen. And so he went over and over again to the SEC, and they just ignored him.
But the whistleblowers,
I was ignored.
But the whistleblowers in California, CalSTRS, Scott Thompson was a whistleblower about spiking by superintendents in the California school system.
Yes.
For, which they were illegally spiking their pensions. None of these superintendents were filed criminal charges. They basically,
not that I'm aware of.
And he lost his job.
He lost his job.
Whistleblowers
lose their job. And it's because the system is set up not to help the public at large and not for transparency. It's a money system. So the money goes into the campaign coffers, and the elected officials do what they're being told to do. It's almost like puppeteers. I mean, and that's a shame. And that's a shame that we've gotten so out of whack. There may have been a time where I voted for Jerry Brown, and I would say I was proud of it because, the alternative I didn't like, what she was threatening to do. But I sit here today and I'm embarrassed to say I voted for him. Is there, is some good in him? I don't know. I hope so. I hope if he ever sees this video, he could look at the violations and
doesn't he know what he's doing? Don't you think he knows what he's doing? He's a smart man.
I'm concerned that a lot of politicians, I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of politicians are doing what's in the interest of their pocketbook and not what's in the interest for the public at large.
But when he went in Oakland, he was diverting money from public schools into his private military charters. I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing, don't you think? I mean, these people are conscious. I mean, they're intelligent, conscious
That's
people.
what I say. Everyone, we all wake up every day, and you could decide to take a bunch of money and go live in the Oakland Hills and have a ranch in Marin County or wherever else he has property, round to partner investments, who knows what they're investing in. You can decide to do the right thing and comply with the law and do what's best for everyone when you take public office, or you could just take public office as an opportunity to make money. And it's really become a revolving door. I mean, they go in and they're really, they're wealthier than when they start out.
They have a business plan.
It's a business plan, exactly. And it's, public service should be for only those people who want to serve the public, not for those people who see it as a revolving door to get their next money, or to see it as a kickback for corporations who give them money and they can go on worldwide trips and whatnot. And that's what it's become, and it's really bad.
So why don't you talk about the law firms that are supposed to represent teachers that are impacted?
So the California Teachers Association has contracts with private law firms. In the Southern California area, there's Trigstad, Schwab, and Trigstan. And their two main partners there are Rick Schwab and Larry Trigstad. So in the Fresno area, it's Tuttle and McCloskey, I think it is. In the Sacramento region, it's Rothschild, Wishick, and Sands. So there's various attorneys that have contracted with the CTA to represent teachers, either it be through a dismissal action, a work-related issue at the district level, or at the CTC, which is their licensing, their licenses being subjected to some kind of sanction potentially. But as I said earlier, these lawyers, if they did not sign these consent determinations where their client, these consent determinations, these settlement agreements are public record, and if they didn't sign them where their client is literally being told, being labeled as having a mental disorder, one, that's wrong, and two, being told that they have to get a psyche valve. And the reason it's wrong is let me back up. The reason it's wrong is because you don't publicly display that someone has a mental disorder. So there may be legitimately someone with mental health disorders, or there may be perceived mental health disorders, where someone shouldn't be in the classroom, but you know, there's a fair, ethical, and just way to deal with that, just like you with any medical issue, and that's to offer someone a reasonable accommodation so they can keep their job.
But
and so these lawyers have essentially signed settlement agreements, and these settlement agreements are public information obtainable through a public record request, and they're on a consent calendar that the CTC publishes that goes out to all the school districts. So you see, you know, Joe Smith is suspended because he has a mental disorder. I mean, my God, poor Joe Smith. I mean, he's never going to get a job now. He's not going to get a job at McDonald's. He's not going to get a job at Target, let alone teaching, for crying out loud. You don't do that to someone. It's just completely unethical. It's inhumane. And so if these attorneys didn't sign those settlement agreements, they should have a criminal investigation, because that's forgery. If they did sign it, then these teachers should be enraged, because the CTA need to find new law firms to represent them, because it's an outrage to have a person be put up in a public spectrum as having a mental disorder. It's just, it's outrageous. They shouldn't even be practicing law.
But there are other teachers who have had problems with CTA being properly represented.
Yes, I've talked to a number of people who have literally either at the CTC level, there was no jurisdiction to go after them, and yet they didn't represent them. They just, you know, gave them a runaround.
Wouldn't they know that if the CTC had no jurisdiction?
And the reason they know that is because I've seen them represent school administrators that weren't teachers or school counselors, and for the school administrator, they would write up a brief and argue that the CTC didn't have jurisdiction. But when it's just a measly little school counselor who's blowing a whistle, or a teacher who they're trying to get rid of, no, they don't make the same argument, and they just let that person drown and go into poverty. It's just absolutely unethical. It's unequal treatment. It's horrific. And teachers need to know what's happening, because it is happening. I have the documents to prove it. I've talked to the people, and some people you have actually interviewed, who have just been sent down the river. I mean, it's just horrible.
And why would the CTA do that?
Why
would the CTA lawyers do that?
Okay, CTA lawyers, the law firms, they make money. They get so many thousands of dollars to represent them through a dismissal hearing. If they're a tenured teacher and they go through a CPC hearing, they just get money. They don't, I mean, to me, there are some good lawyers, and I did work with some, and they were ethical, and they fought for their clients, and that's what you're supposed to do. But there were some that it's just like they're just taking money. They're just taking money, selling people down the river, and then not really arguing to protect them. I mean, to me, there's just no way any lawyer should allow their client to be on a public display as having a mental disorder. I can't stress enough how unethical that is. Something is seriously wrong, and it's not just one story like that. It's really bad.